Claudia, welcome to the Plastic Couch Podcast.
Thank you. I love it.
So we're gonna get started, and what I would love, like Claudia, I would love for you to introduce yourself. So who are you? Tell our listeners who you are.
Sure. I'm Claudia Katarucci, and basically, I am most known here in Washington, D.C. for being a psychotherapist for the last 24 years. And I work with groups and individuals. I used to work with couples, but not as much anymore. And my folks are colorful people and LGBTQIA people and folks who are just healing and self-exploring and self-reflecting and really, really, really committed to their inner work. Like that's who I work with best.
So committed to their inner work. So tell us a little bit about how you define that. Like, what are the signs? Like, how do you know somebody is committed to their inner work?
I think you can see them immediately. There's all sorts of kinesthetic ways, which you and I love being intuitives, is people who immediately want to ask themselves questions,
Yes.
even when they know it's uncomfortable. People who organically for years, probably since they were children, have been asking themselves questions about the dynamics that are around them, about their parents, about their family, about race, about why that family does it that way. Just people who ask internal questions and people who like to go inside. So maybe as a child, you might have been someone who wanted to be in their room after playing with friends and writing things or writing down the songs they knew or really observing how people related to each other, a natural tendency to observe. And so this idea that the other thing is, if you don't know that you might be this person, notice what lights you up. And usually it's those programs on TV that are talking about relationships and dynamics and make you think. They sort of tickle your brain a little bit and your soul a little bit. Most of your listeners are probably those folks who have been
Absolutely.
following their soul, for sure, right?
Absolutely. And it's like it's also the empaths, right? So the people that they deeply feel and understand things without even, like, when you walk into the room, you can kind of feel and sense what's going on. If someone has a problem with somebody, you can see it, you can feel it. And it's really like, you want to understand more about a relationship. Just like, when you talked about TV shows, there are plenty of people who watch, My 600-Pound Life or Hoarders or different shows like that, where it's not just about the thing. It's like, why is this? Why? How did this come about?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
For sure, for sure. And I'm glad you mentioned empaths, because you know more than anyone else that's really, really, really one of my areas of expertise, is working with the empath. The empath who's not healed, but the empath who is high functioning, knowing themselves, really identifying with their new way of being as an empath in the world.
Yeah. So Claudia, so you definitely are a very unique therapist in terms of, how you really approach situations. And so I want you to just talk a little bit about how therapy evolved into dynamic meditation with some clients, or how dynamic meditation evolved into therapy. Like, which came first?
Sure. What a good question. And just for all your folks who don't know what dynamic meditation is dynamic meditation is a compilation that I put together of the things that I had learned, the meditations, the clinical techniques, the strategies for self-healing, literally for self-healing, that I learned throughout the years. And I called it the best of the best for me. And I put them all together from different teachers, different therapists, different, just even philosophers, spiritual teachers. So it's an amalgam, right? Dynamic meditation is an amalgam. And so I've been a spiritual seeker all my life. And in the 2000s in particular, which I think is when the planet started really like just stretching its arms in terms of exploring new ways of exploring spirituality and exploring themselves, itself. I just felt this calling, Kristen, over and over of putting this together because I was reading a ton. I was reading Conversations with God. I was studying the Course in Miracles. I was in 12-step programs for myself. So I was doing meditation, Buddhist meditation, and contemplative Christianity meditation. So all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, this is for everyone. It doesn't matter what tradition you come from. So I put this together, and in 2009, I literally woke up from a dream, as you know, and the word dynamic. It was in big letters, the word dynamic. And dynamic means, which is how I've been trained.
Hold on 1 second. There was a glitch. So just start with dynamic means.
Dynamic means the way that I latched onto the word dynamic, which was given to me in a dream, is that I was trained psychodynamically or psychoanalytically, which is the study of the unconscious, the study of the energetic forces within us that are unconscious. And so part of my therapeutic approach is psychodynamic, which is to bring all of those unconscious forces, layers up into our conscious selves, right? So that's how I work psychotherapeutically. But dynamic also means powerful, energetic, life transforming, like you, Kristen. I think you are a dynamic person, and you're dynamic in terms of your energy, but also in terms of your calling.
Yes.
And so
yes.
so that was another thing, is like going inside just makes us more dynamic individuals.
So it's funny that you say that, because my whole life I've always been like, so my husband, we have this joke where he'll be like, okay, give me your favorite book, or I'll be like, oh, this is my favorite. And he's like, you cannot have 800 favorites. I'm like, yes, I can. Right. And I feel like that for my whole life, there have been so many different things that I've been interested in. And to me, that's dynamic, right? It's not just like one box where you just do this thing, but it's like expansive. It's expansive.
It is. Dynamic means growth and expansion. It means energetic forces. Yes, absolutely. I'm so with you. It must involve evolution.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yes.
it must.
Yes. Because we're always expanding, like the universe is always expanding. Like we just found out that we have all of these other planets out there, right? Well, not just, but we're finding out that there are more and more planets that we're discovering. So if the universe is always expanding, then we have to always be expanding as well, right?
Right. If we're dynamic people,
Correct.
because there is a challenge in staying static.
Yes.
And I always say, listen, we need that diner, that neighborhood diner. I call that like the securely attached diner, where it's the same family, it's the same menu, and we love it because that's where we go get the number 10, whatever the number 10 is. And it gives us the sense that things are safe and okay, and we're securely attached. But if we only have that, we're not growing and expanding. And that's in our marriages, that's in our parental relationships, in our work. But let me tell you the third piece about dynamic that's really, really, really important. So, as you know, I'm Latina, and I found that with the folks that I work with, whether it's colorful people, it's mostly people with post-traumatic stress disorder or ADHD or anxiety. the idea of just sitting in the lotus position for 20 or 30 minutes actually was triggering, is triggering.
Mm.
So the technique of dynamic meditation had to be dynamic. And I personally found that even though I had a contemplative practice every morning and still do, I still have a silence practice basically in the mornings. I was finding that throughout the day, I still got triggered. I would get a phone call or I would have an interaction, and I didn't have that on the go, in the moment tool, the dynamic tool in the moment. And so dynamic meditation is very specific that way. You're on the
Tools that you can use on the go all the time.
On the go. And for folks with post-traumatic stress and anxiety, or folks that feel like they've got a ton of energy or on the go, it's amazing. It's amazing for me as well. The other thing is, I think it keeps us like being meditators all day long, right? It's not just going to church on Sundays. It's like you're in church all day. You're practicing all day, and you can be practicing all day.
Yeah, so let me actually go back to you talking about colorful people. And I love the way that you describe yourself as colorful. So tell us a little bit about what that means for you. What does it mean to be colorful?
Yes. Well, so I wasn't born in this country. I moved to this country, and I moved to this country when I was 16. And it was so confusing for me. Because I'd lived most of my life in Asia and Latin America. And so when I came here, there was like a ton of focus on how you self-label, or how you label, or on your forms, how you label. And at least with my family, we couldn't find the exact spot, like, am I Latina? Am I Hispanic? My dad's American Italian. And then I was called white Latina. Like, there were all these gradations to who I was. And then lastly, it was person of color, right? Like to be called a person of color. And all of that, I sort of moved into and dynamically adapted to and integrated inside myself. And I had this experience again, because I do think like we have these intuitive hits, or God speaks to us through dreams, through moments, through goosebumps. And I was watching, I had this night where I watched this Bollywood romance, and the saris and the dancing and the colors and the gazing, and I just felt ridiculously connected. And to the dancing, to the beat, to the body exposure, to the colors, fuchsias, oranges, yellows.
Yes. My
like
colors.
What you're wearing, right?
Yes.
Like reds, unapologetic colors. And I just felt something. And then I started watching this period piece that was taking place in the countryside of Colombia, my own country. Same thing. Same skin colors. From white to beige to dark brown to black. Same clothing colors. Bright oranges, yellows, blues. Same dancing around the fire, beat, passion, bodies, unapologetic. Same passion for romance, unabashed.
I love it. I love it.
Adore you. And it occurred to me, we're colorful people.
Yes, yes.
And it switched everything around for me. We're not just person of color. After colorful people came to me, person of color, really, I felt like othered me, like put me in a corner somewhere. Well, colorful people, again, right, Kristen, expanded the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Because it became an embodiment of expression. It became how we move our bodies, how we dance salsa, how we dance in Bollywood, how we dance, how we express, how we touch. It became how we greet. Greetings
Yes.
are a part of it.
The greetings are such a part of it, right? Because there's a whole, when we talk about people of color or colorful people, it is not the same. It's not like there is a whole thing to the hellos and the goodbyes, all of that.
Or the I don't know you on the street, but I say hello. I don't know, like I want to say formality, but it's like the ritual and respect of greeting. And that's global.
Yes.
So when I'm talking about colorful people, what me cayó el cinco, which means in Spanish, the penny dropped, me cayó el cinco. I just felt like we are a colorful people in so many ways. And that includes this embodiment of expression, an embodiment of sensuality.
Yep.
And it's also super inclusive, which is one of the things you and I talk about. It's inclusive of the sepia rainbow, of being light-skinned, all the way over here light-skinned, to all the way over here dark-skinned. The beautiful sepia rainbow that we,
because it's the feeling, and I think it's like it gets into the nuance, which is really, I guess, how you and I are connected is stepping into the nuance of humanity and stepping into the stepping into the nuance of all things, because nothing is just what it seems. It's always, there's a nuance, but you can actually, no matter the color of meeting someone, when you vibe with them and they are like, it's you feel the same energy, you feel the same, just, I don't know, like it's the same vibration. We all have stories about that. It doesn't matter, if that person is white, which country they're from, you can feel it. You have this sense, and that definitely connects you.
yes, it's the energetic frequency, isn't it? Like if we talk about it in sort of energetics, in fact, it's a way of connecting.
Yes.
It's
yes.
a way of connecting. I remember when I first moved here, it was 8th grade. And I was that Latina with like tight jeans and heels in 8th grade, because that's what we did. And I remember arriving to an American school and no one was dressing like that except for Black people. Except for really wanting to dress. And so that was my connecting. That was like, oh, you get it. And you want to dance, because that was the other thing, is sort of this connecting through dancing, through music, through the freedom of dancing, through that
expression.
Correct.
Expression.
Body
yep.
expression. And so what you're saying is absolutely right, is how we, and sometimes being in other countries is connecting to people who are American. It's like, oh,
Exactly.
You get me.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. And we can definitely do that. Like through traveling, there are definitely people that you meet. For me, it's random, like the person sitting next to me on the plane or in a cafe all over the world, where you feel like you've known them your whole life. Like, to me, that's my definition of colorful. It's like you feel this connection to them, in so many different ways.
You're really understanding what I'm saying that way, in terms of the embodiment of expression that
Yes.
includes our color. It includes sort of the sepia rainbow that we are on the outside. Yes, it includes that. But I think you're really understanding that it is a form of expressing oneself, because I feel that with fashion, right? I feel that with our and fashion just being the art that we wear, and that includes people in the LGBTQIA community. It includes how we want to express ourselves in the world.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It definitely does. It is much more inclusive and expansive of including people from all different skin colors, countries. It's, sexualities. Like it's everything. It's much more expansive, definitely.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
When we think of just royalty, or we think of entertainers, or we think of actors, colorfulness is their boldness, is expressing stature, is expressing courage,
Yeah.
right? I have the courage to wear this. I have the courage to dance in front of millions of people. It's
Yes,
bold.
boldness and vibrancy, and yeah, absolutely. And it really is like, okay, so in my background, like in my, the Crockett Collective branding, that that deep fuchsia pink, like that's the reason why that is my brand color, because that color makes me feel a completely different way. And I don't know, Claudia, maybe I'm the only person who's like this, but I will wake up in the morning and sometimes I'll put on a shirt and I'll be like, this isn't the color I want to feel today. Right. And put on something else that makes me like it matches how I feel, much more vibrant or colorful. So yeah.
I definitely feel you embody that. Absolutely. With sort of the earrings that you choose and the colors that you choose,
Yes.
you express, and there's a sense of there is this sense of alignment for you. Like you are being intentional and particular about how you're expressing yourself, because I do include fashion in this.
Yes, absolutely.
Fashion. What we wear on our bodies is a form of being colorful and expressive.
Yeah.
Across the globe,
Yeah.
across history.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is, and it's humanity, like what you and I've been talking about a lot. Like it's human.
Right. And it gets at the heart of a feeling of how we feel when we are around colorful people, Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Oh, good. I'm glad. And I really appreciate that you understand the soul behind it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I identify as a colorful person.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. So Claudia, pandemic, past few years, I'm sure that your client roster, shall we say, boosted itself a lot from what people really needed. But I want to kind of get your take on this idea of like the collective consciousness and all the things that had to happen in order for the world to move in a different direction, right? Like, how do you think that COVID really has helped to, or do you think that it's helped to push us in a specific way? Has it pushed us forward? What's your take on that?
Yeah, what a great, profound question. And let's start by acknowledging that COVID ravaged people.
Yeah.
And homes, and added to the trauma that was on the planet.
Yes.
But my take on it is what I found in myself, Kristen, in myself and in the collective, because I do believe that the personal is collective. What's happening inside of me is happening out there, and what happens out there is happening with me, and it's interconnected, and we're interconnected through just being human or energetics or the quantum field, whatever it is that you want to put on it, but we are looping with others and the planet out there. What I found was that COVID, like any other modality that invites us to go inside, whether it's therapy, whether it's being in 12 steps, whether it's meditation, whether it's psychedelics, anything that invites us to go inside will be disruptive at first,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
And so when you think of that metaphor, COVID forced us to go inside. We literally had to go inside our homes. And
Yes.
that meant that we couldn't escape ourselves. Okay. We just couldn't. We couldn't escape what we felt around our families, our lovers. For some of us, it meant that we were alone 24/7. So this idea, like in any meditative practice or therapeutic practice, is that we had to go inside.
Yeah.
And that's going to bring up a lot of stuff first.
Yep. Because there's so many people that were escaping. Like, work is definitely an escape for a lot of people. Like, the act of leaving outside, your home to go to work can be an escape. And so like you said, but then there were people who couldn't go anywhere, where you're either trapped around your entire family, right? Or your spouse, or who you're dating, or you are isolated from everybody. Yeah.
Everyone had to metaphorically and concretely go inside. And so what I found, and in myself, I found this, it reactivated childhood trauma.
Yes. Yes.
So if you felt unprotected as a child, it showed up.
Yeah.
If you felt abandoned or neglected, if you felt enforced, because a lot of people resisted that there was so much enforcement, or obligated. If you felt that there was any type of horrific childhood experience, we were seeing it. We were seeing people dying in hospitals. We saw George Floyd. There was no escaping what was happening inside of us or outside of us.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a good part, right?
Right. Yes.
There's a good part. It exploded what I call the era of healing, seeing, and feeling.
Yes. Agreed.
Absolutely. That's why psychotherapy practices were full, and it's no longer taboo. It's no longer a luxury. It's like going to the gym. People are doing internal work, right? We thank people, and especially for colorful people, where we're talking about trauma, or some of the abuses or pain as a child has always been kept very closeted or quiet. It is open. People are sharing their pain. People are converging and communing. It has been an explosive time of healing, and that's continuing. So words like trauma and post-traumatic stress and meditation and psychedelic psychotherapy, all of that is happening now.
Yeah. And those are words that were very scary for people before. Even, you and I have talked a lot about just my work with loss, right? So not just loss of people, but loss of things. And how change is really like, anytime you have a change, there are all these emotions that are involved in that. And I think that people are more comfortable than ever talking about those things, compared to 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I feel that it's a global mandate right now, that there's something where people are making it a part of their existence to heal. And you and I are co-authors in a book
Yes.
right now. So and it's a book called Diversity in Humanity. And one of the things that I'm talking about, Kristen, in the book is this idea that we, as humans, we've lived in this extinction paradigm, meaning, and again, the individual is the collective is the individual, in this self-hate mode.
Mm.
And I find, and I decree, that self-hate is basically the root of all holistic diseases.
I am 100% in agreement with that. 100%. Yeah, because it's so, that is definitely tied to my work all of the time, with helping people understand how emotions, when we are not dealing with them, when they're not leaving our bodies, we're not journaling, we're not talking about it, we're not working with a coach or a therapist, we're not talking to our friends, we're not writing, then it stays inside of our bodies, inside of ourselves. It's got to go somewhere.
And that somewhere might be to our kids.
Yes.
And that somewhere might be to lung cancer.
Yep.
And that somewhere might be to our finances.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to show up. And that somewhere might be to classism and racism, meaning it does have to go somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
And it extinguishes ourselves. Yeah. Whether it be through our individual existence, but our global existence. And so this is the time to be healing ourselves, to be healing others, to really be dealing with all of our ancestral trauma, especially colorful people. We have a lot of ancestral trauma, right?
Yep.
Y poniéndole un parado, which means like in saying stop. Stop. I always say to my son, listen, papi, I say, I know I've got some post-trauma that I've passed on to you. And we're just going to stay in conversation about it. And right. You're going to notice it, and I'm going to notice it. Because the more we're talking about it, it doesn't mean that I haven't passed it on. It means that we are staying in the conversation about it to transmute it and transform it.
Yeah, we're leaving it open just in case we can talk about it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because there is such a, there's such a difference in a lot of my friends and my parents and my friends' parents in terms of what they felt comfortable even talking about, just opening the door for a discussion versus parents now. And, I do hear some people saying like, oh, kids nowadays, they're so soft, they're this, I'm like, you all have no idea how powerful this new generation of children actually are, because they are really so super in tune with their emotions. Also, because of social media, the connection of being able to see things on Instagram and TikTok and, all of these different, and Facebook, like all of these different things and experiences where they instantly can travel to another country, versus when we were growing up, it was like we had to travel to another country to get that experience of what that person felt or what it was like. So they are much more connected, and in a way that, our parents were very disconnected from themselves, so.
Beautiful. And you, Kristen, who you work a lot with sort of EQ, right?
Yes. Yep.
Right? So the kids today and allowing healing. So even if you're not a kid, for your listeners, even if you're not a kid today, thanks to neuroplasticity, sort of the ability to still grow and change our mind and change the way we think. The kids today have such high EQ and high IQ. It's a convergence of that. Yes. Actually, the high functioning empath is through the roof, like you, has high IQ and high EQ. There's an integration of being intellectually alive, but also emotionally in tune and attuned.
Yeah.
Which is what makes them so powerful, which is what you're describing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I like that that phrase of alive. I'm going to merge what you just said and say emotionally alive, right? Because that's the thing is like, do I know what I'm feeling? And then do I want to know where it comes from? So a lot of my work is always around the root cause of things. Where did it stem from? So that we can then work on that instead of our whole entire society of just fixing or just treating the symptom and not like where it came from. So it's so interesting, Claudia. We had
And
Stephen.
untying it at the root, right? Untying it at the root.
Yes, untying it and also like freeing it, right? Freeing it, understanding where it came from, and you making that choice to actually, how are you going to deal with it? Are you going to let it sit there, you know, and just say, okay, it's there? Are you going to actually, look at what it also is impacting? And then from that recognition, what are we going to do from there? So I think that that's something that was actually really missing. I was going to say we had a session yesterday from Stephen Hughes, who really is a financial therapist, and talked to us a lot about the root cause of our money issues, which I know that you definitely work with people on that too. The shame, the guilt, all of that, and how, I think for you and I, Claudia, I can probably speak for both of us and say like everything is interconnected to our experiences, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we're believers in that. We're believers in that.
Yeah.
That energetically, that through osmosis, it is all we are interconnected as humans, but also how one thing, people don't think that our emotions impact our finances, right? So, and I hold this belief that if we're leaking financially, because it certainly happened for me, when I have leaked the most financially is when I have felt the most alone. Because there's something about the metaphor, the energy of money,
Yes.
that gives us the ingredients. And really, I want to talk about the metaphor, the ingredients of feeling securely attached, safe, able to explore, right? Because when we have money, we're able to explore. We're able to take risks because we're safe enough. And let me bring that around when you said that people are like kids today are soft. I wrote down here soft and safe.
Correct. Yeah.
Because there is something, and for anyone who's saying that, it's like, listen, when you find a lover or a best friend or a therapist where you can start telling them how you feel, how afraid you are, how irritated you are, how in love you are, how gleeful you are, because it's those feelings too, how excited, you're safe.
Yeah.
So there's a safety happening, and I know it feels like the world is more dangerous. It's not. There's actually ways that the world is safer than it's ever been. And that's why there's this explosive healing movement.
Yeah. And it's interesting when you talk about safety, some of the things that my kids have talked to me about, I have to admit that inside I am like, oh my God. Oh my God.
Those moments, you're like, okay.
I am like, I could have never talked to my parents about this, right? So I say that's it, that's the internal emotion, but externally, I'm like, okay, all right, let's talk about it. Let's, because I think that also does lend itself to the safety that kids now are talking about things that they never talked about, that we wouldn't even think about talking about with our parents. And I love the emotional safety for the kids nowadays, that they can discuss it, whether it's with us or with friends, or like that they feel comfortable in talking about it. And I will listen, I will never forget when I was babysitting and I had so the kids were 2 and 6, and they were so I, that's when I started babysitting, and I kind of babysat with them for years. And one day, they just randomly, the son randomly asked me, "What happens if if you're having sex and you have to go to the bathroom?" So I had to,
good question.
I didn't react. I just explained it to him, and we kind of moved on. And then I talked to his mom about it, and she said to me, like, "I'm super excited that they felt safe enough to ask you that." So I think that safety, like how we provide safety for people, is something that has changed, because before it was about like, am I giving you, like, am I providing housing for you? Am I going to work every day? Is there food on the table? And I think that emotional safety is something that we are now moving into as, like, it's something that I talk about all the time with the leaders that I work with the people that I work with. And I think that that's different. So do you agree or disagree, Claudia? Like,
Oh, I love it. And I want to just really honor that what you're describing is mindful parenting, Kristen, what you're doing. Because mindful parenting requires pausing.
Yes.
Even, and it's hard.
Yeah.
Even in the moment where you're like, okay, I'm going to pause, and just because immediately you've got to look at what the moment is, right? What's happening mindfully in the moment. And so I remember so many examples in my life with my son, but I remember once he had exactly like how you had, he had his earphones on and he's like, "Mom, I love this song," right? It was rap music, and he put one in my ear and he had the other one. And it had so many curse words. So like, it was like the beat was super violent. And I remember having this wave of like, why? I didn't say it. Why are you listening to this, right? And all of a sudden I expanded into mindfulness, and I noticed us both connected, and that he felt safe enough to be like, this is what I'm into.
Right.
And
Yep.
in the moment I knew, now, right? This is what he's into. Remember what we were in, push in the bush. I remember my mom was horrified when I was dancing to push in the bush, but same idea, right? Giving it a lot of space.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really want to honor that it's obvious that kids or your kids feel that around you. This mindful parenting, this like, let me notice the moment versus actually what's being asked or talked about or said, like holding the moment as more sacred than the actual.
Yeah. And it's not easy.
No,
it is not easy. Sometimes
hard.
I am literally screaming inside, like, "Oh my God, I cannot believe that I'm having this conversation."
For sure. Kristen, let me lower this for a second.
Yep.
Let me just lower this, because we must be talking about things that just bring light.
Sunlight.
Yes. Here. Let me lower this other one. Hold on.
Okay. There you go. That worked.
Yeah, that worked. Perfect. Okay. So this whole idea of safety and whole, but that's where mindfulness or meditation or knowing yourself or having the ability, and this is for your leaders, this is for your listeners. It's this idea of I'm pausing before I'm reacting.
Yeah. Yep.
To anyone, to my employee, to my kid, to my husband, to the person on the bus. right? Do I have the wherewithal to not have my emotions spew? And so when people are like, why get in touch with your emotions? It's because you become someone who has emotional wherewithal and therefore the ability to connect with others. Exactly. I mean, we keep coming back to the same thing, right, Kristen? The ability to say, I get what you're feeling.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, so for you, this is a tool of dynamic meditation, pausing. And for me, I call it emotional intelligence, like understanding how your emotions are impacting you or others. But it essentially is the same. It looks the same and it impacts people the same, where it is this ability to pause, to say, okay, what just happened? How am I feeling? Labeling the emotion, and then thinking before you actually act, or even thinking about the why. Why do I feel this way?
Absolutely. Well, I would say that any pausing, any mindfulness, any self exploration and self healing increases and improves emotional intelligence.
Yes. Yep.
Here,
Absolutely.
the
Yep.
more internal work you do, which brings us back to the beginning of our podcast, or what your podcast is, it makes us more emotionally aware all around. And as we know, when you and I talk about leadership, that's what corporations, that's what organizations after COVID, high emotional intelligence is top of
Yeah.
what people are requiring.
Yeah.
Um, Not just high IQ, the ability to feel a room, the ability to feel your team, um, the ability to feel what the dynamics that are happening.
Yeah, without people even saying anything. It's like that's the thing. It's like if you're a leader, you need to be able to see, something's different from the way that they are on the screen to the way that I walk into the room. Like something's different. Let me kind of look and see what that is about, right? Whereas before, a lot of organizations, it was fine to have leaders that were detached, right? As long as you get the work done. I just need you to are you getting the work done? Okay, you're getting the work done. Okay, there's fine. It's fine. But now it's not fine. It's never been fine for me. Let me just say that. But definitely with the way that our world has shifted in the past few years, we can't afford to have people or humans or leaders that are not connected to themselves or others.
Absolutely. And that's where people like you are ahead. And that's why I call it an era of healing, seeing, and feeling, because I think part of the zeitgeist is that men are identifying with their emotions, colorful people are identifying their emotions. We're teaching our children, because our emotions are a messaging system. They're there for a reason. They're there to tell us something's right, something's wrong. This is my passion. How do I interact with people, right? Sort of mirror neurons. How do I connect with people?
Yeah.
This is the age of healing, seeing, and feeling.
Yeah. And I want to say one thing too, like when you said for men, I want to throw women in there too, because I feel like for the longest, women have taken on responsibility and have just done what they needed to do without actually thinking about how it felt, right? So this disconnection between the emotion and the responsibility. And definitely that happens for men as well, 100%. But I think that we don't talk about it in women enough. And it's so interesting. I just had a client just tell me, she said, one of the things with working with you is that my bladder is better. And I'll explain that. It's like a lot of people who are high achievers or high performers who have a lot of responsibility on their plate, will go to the bathroom when they can't even take it anymore. There's a connection physically,
Love
with
this.
that. Yeah. And so what she said is, I now realized that I do come first. And the whole issues with my bladder have changed. So that is definitely something
So
where,
powerful.
yeah, where women also really have to start, we have to start looking at how it feels to have all of this responsibility, so that we can begin to shift things for our children, or for the people, like if we choose to not have children, for the people around us, our relationships, our interpersonal relationships.
Yeah, and talk about nuance, Kristen. I really appreciate what you're saying because usually, right, the stereotype is that women are the feelers, men are not the feelers. And in some ways, of course, right, human culture has done that with men, and that's changing. But this is way more nuanced for women who are feelers, which is there are, but the feelings are left aside or pushed aside in
Correct.
order to take care of other people's feelings.
Right. Because it's like, if no, who's going to do it? If I don't do it, who's going to do it? Right. So it's like, you take care of other people's feelings, you absorb all of that, you do the work. And then it's like, where do your feelings come out?
And you don't even go to the bathroom.
You don't even go to the bathroom, or you wait until you just can't even take it anymore. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
Because it's not taking care of the self, right? It's not putting yourself first. It is like literally a physical manifestation of putting yourself last in everything.
Yeah, I talk a lot about putting yourself in the equation. Um, and I always say I'm really terrible at math, but there are some math concepts that give a great image.
I
And
knew
it's
we were
like,
connected.
terrible, I'm terrible. But I teach math all the time when I'm trying to teach metaphor, which is like 1 + 0 is 1.
Yeah.
Like if you're the 0 in the equation, it'll always be the other person. 1 + 1 is 2. And put yourself in the equation, right? Which is hard. That's a practice.
Yes.
Keep putting
Yes.
yourself in the equation. I count. I matter. My feelings matter. My urge matters.
Mhm.
My passion matters. What lights me up matters. Listen.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And it's been, when I see that, I definitely think back to like where it comes from. And I can just say, for me, it was even just like a very strong thing for me is looking like, sitting down on the sofa. My mom was there and she was like, I was like maybe 5 or 6, and she's like, close your legs. Like, you're like, you have a skirt on, what? Close and it's like, when you think about all of the things that we are told to like just do, as little girl children, like, you got to do this, do that. And it's like, there's no why about it. It's just all like these rules around what we can do and what we can't do. And we normally just accept it as, that's just, it is what it is. And so I think that that's also tied to this inability to voice an opinion, because it was just like, we just had to do it. That's it. There's no, I'm the parent, you're the child, you got to do it. Stay silent, don't say anything. So as we're talking about making room for emotions in children and in people and women and definitely men, I'm 100% with helping people, or with men especially, feel more vulnerable and able to express their emotions. I think that it's just really important for us to see, like, or to think about, what are the reasons, what are the things that made us feel that we did not matter, right? That our emotions, creativity, all of that did not matter.
Yeah, you're making such a good point. There's a word in psychology, it's called introject, and I love it because it means that we swallowed things whole.
Yes.
So
Yes.
whether it's racism or classism or religious beliefs or the ways of being in the world, what you're describing, which of course makes sense in little ones, those are the years that we're just imitating. And there's nothing more than we want than our parental love.
Yes. Yep.
And so there's this belief of, if I just do what they say, there's not even a belief, we're just doing it as a response.
Yeah.
And we're introjecting these rules, right? Which is why it's so easy. The Jesuits used to say, give me a boy before 7 and I'll show you the man. And that's for all of us. Like, I will show you the person this according to what this child introjects, right? And today, of course, what we're talking about is that there's more, parents are seeing their child more, seeing their responses, because children want to please beautifully. They're gorgeous. They're amazing. They want to please. They want to make the parent happy. And if we're not mindful, conscious parents, and that goes across the board with other adults, with lovers, with you and me, if we're not being really conscious. So all of those introjects and then it's later on in life as we self-heal and self-reflect that we say, do I want that belief?
Right. Yeah.
I'm so wounded around that. Like, I don't want that anymore, right? I just don't want that anymore. And it requires checking in, going, doing the check-in.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like when you swallow anything whole, eventually it's difficult, there's some kind of difficulty. It's either going in, like how it feels like, it's swallowing things whole just never worked for me as a kid. Like, and I'm talking about like the metaphysical, right?
Yes.
Why other people did things or why we were told this. I'm like, but why?
I bet you were like that. I can see you absolutely being like that and being so confused. So I'll add a little thing too about empaths. And this idea that I've heard you talk about a lot, and when in the empath leader course, when I'm teaching it, it's so nuanced, Kristen. So when we think of responsibility as a word, it's actually, right, the root of responsibility is response. It's responsiveness. And wounded or untrained or unskilled or spastic empaths impulsively respond.
Yes.
Impulsively respond to environments, to harmonizing quickly, to keeping the peace. And so over time, they become highly valued for being responsible, because the empath will quickly fix, is the problem solver. Amazing. The skills that the empath develops when they're wounded or unskilled and untrained. Basically, one of their strengths, and certainly in the people you work with, is that become over responsibilized.
Yes.
And it's weird to say that because everyone wants a responsible child, husband, wife, team player, employee. So with the empath, you have to dial down on how much they feel responsible.
Absolutely.
Everything. Right?
Yes. Yeah. Everybody's guilt, everyone's emotions, everyone's stuff. Like, they feel it all and they take it on. It becomes theirs. It's someone had a jacket on, The empaths just put it on themselves.
Correct. And it's though it comes from a willingness, it's beautiful, an openness, the root to respond, to want to respond.
Yeah.
And it just gets skewed, distorted, wounded, spastic. I know, I always say I'm an empath in recovery because I'm a responsive person in recovery, because I have to pause before I respond to everything.
Well, and that's the thing, Claudia. So this is where human design comes in. And I'll talk a little bit about it. You know, human design, understanding what energy type that you are, right? And human design is all about energy. But when we talk about generators, and we talk about manifesting generators who are definitely still generators, their whole strategy in life should be to respond. So the nuance is that you have to respond to what lights you up. Not just responding to anything, but it's responding to what lights you up and follow that path instead of just responding to everything.
Beautiful, beautiful. And if that manifesting generator grows up in an abusive home or a conflictual home, or a home where so much is not being addressed, that person will be responding to all of that. And that's where it gets derailed and skewed. And then they're not in the equation anymore. It's 1 + 0 = 1. They lose the equation because they're and they burn out, right?
Yes.
Those are the people who come to you. They're burnt out on responding to everything else.
Yes.
And not responding to their own bladder.
Exactly. Yeah. Or their own needs or their own wants, or even knowing what they are. Like even the concept of, you know, when I talk about the joy list and like what brings you joy, there's so many clients and leaders that don't even know what brings them joy because they've been too responsible to ever really pursue things that make them happy.
Yes. Yes. And let's be clear for anyone who's listening. Being responsible is amazing. It provides structure and safety. What we're talking about is the type of responsibility where there is no joy, where there is no responding to the self, where there is, where it's impulsive.
And reactive. Yeah.
Where there's no sacred pause.
Yeah.
Right? Which is mindfulness and reflection and contemplation of, is this for me? I remember, listen, you're going to love this because it's so hilarious. I remember walking my dog on a morning, and a woman who was walking her dog was walking next to me. And we started talking as people do. And she was telling me that she had just gone through cancer treatment and she was getting better. And I immediately said, how can I help? Which is actually a lovely thing, right? A lovely reaction. I was like, how can I help? I didn't know her name. I'd never seen her. I didn't know if she lived near me. And I realized in that moment, my level of impulsivity. Is it beautiful? Yes. Is it generous? Yes. But I myself am a mom. I myself have a roster of clients. I myself have a whole world of people that I'm always engaged with, helping, supporting. So I just noticed my level of impulsivity around that and realizing, oh, I'm still in recovery. I'm still in recovery.
Yeah.
So I love that about myself. I do. It's beautiful. But to notice that was an impulsive reaction, not a really thought through, do I have the time, the space to do this?
Or the capacity,
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what's helped me? I will share something that's helped me, which is whatever, you know, as a listener or anyone, whether it is God or source or universe, whatever your word is, trusting that the universe will take care of everybody, right? So if I don't do it, I don't have to be responsible for someone else, because maybe by me saying I'll do it, let me go back, because this brings me back to like a group session that I was in, where it was like four of us and we were supposed to talk about something and then present it. I love presenting. I love talking. That's what I do for a living. And one of the women in there, she said, well, I'll do it. I hate presenting, but I'll do it. And then she presented, and I absolutely like looked up what her strength was, like, and responsibility was in there. And so even though I would have loved to have done it, she took it on. So I think that a lot of times we are preventing other people from living in their own light, right? By taking on responsibility. So it's like, it's either when we take something on, we either don't allow people the chance to get it worked out on their own, to empower them to really do it, or to find somebody else in their network that could help them in a better way, with like they have the capacity to do it, the skills, all of that. So I think it's almost thinking that we are the only person that can help.
Yes. Well, and I call that, Kristen, you know this, the party of one, right?
Yes.
Party of one syndrome.
Yes.
It's nuance. So party of one, actually, as children, you were the only one.
Yes, exactly.
You were the only one.
It was just you. Yeah.
You were the only one doing the homework. If you needed things done, you were the only one. So that muscle gets so developed, right? So the belief that I might be the only one helping her, she might have a whole family helping her. Right? It had to be me to respond to that situation. I mean, it's hilarious, right? To be someone in recovery from that. No, there's a party of two. And I always say there's a party of two universe, which speaks to your point exactly. Like, there is God, there is the quantum field, there are others, there are parts of the body. I'm just one part of the body. You're another part of the body. There
Right.
are other parts of the body, of the quantum energetic body, that can respond.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And speaking of that connection, like my friend yesterday, it was a full moon yesterday. And she was like, oh my God, the moon, it's a full moon. And I looked outside, I was like, it sure is. And she was like, isn't this crazy that we're in different states, but we see the same moon, right? And I just was like, that's such a beautiful thing. But it is the power of connectedness. And it's also trusting that, going back to this responsibility, that if I don't do it, that person still will get taken care of.
Yes, yes, yes. This is who we're speaking to.
Yes. So, Claudia, we could talk for hours.
Well, can I end with something really
Yes.
quickly? I know we've got to end. So part of when I said, what are we going to talk about for the plastic couch? And you said, well, the premise is this idea of the plastic couch being this, what we cover and your memory is it of your grandmother? Who had the plastic
It's everyone in my family. So
Yes.
like my grandmother, my aunts, all of them.
Yes. And what lies between that, right? So we all have things that lie. And so when I was walking my dog and I was thinking about this question, because I just absolutely love it, love it, love it. So I want to respond to it because I had two answers to it. This idea.
So let me ask you,
Yes.
Claudia.
Yes.
What is your plastic couch? What is the plastic for you?
Yes. So what I came up with was there are no special occasions. Take the plastic off.
Yes.
Wear the lingerie today. Do the dance. Write the book. Use the Thanksgiving plates today with your family. There are no special occasions. The special occasion is now. Take the plastic off.
Yes.
Wear it, be it, do it. That was one. The other that came up for me, Kristen, was the plastic couch is the shame that we sort of closet ourselves with.
Yeah.
That sort of this belief that we don't show how imperfect we are. That we might be geniuses here, but we're terrible at money. Or we're great at being in crowds, but don't know how to have an intimate relationship. That's
Yes.
all of
Yeah.
us. That's
Yeah.
all of us. We're all imperfect. We're all really imperfect, even as healers, as coaches, as parents.
Yes.
We can take that plastic off too, because, yep, the stains are there.
Yes. The mistakes, right? The mistakes.
The learnings.
Yes. And absolutely, right? Because all mistakes are just whispers in the right direction, right? Yeah.
So
So,
yeah,
yeah.
thank you. Thank you for those questions. I really appreciated them. Thank you.
Yes, you're so welcome, Claudia. We want to thank you for being on the Plastic Couch. As always, if this was helpful for you or somebody needs to hear this, please make sure that you share. This is definitely a really great episode, and we want to thank you, Claudia, for being a guest on the Plastic Couch.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen.